It's your boy CB, aka Tough Juice.
Butler has yet to make his move. Now he does. Get separation. Got it.
Tough Juice.
Here's Butler. Oh, Caron Butler.
Still Tough Juice, right?
Always.
He went to school in a tough neighborhood where he grew up in Wisconsin.
I got sentenced to 2 years in corrections. I did 18 months.
That was my darkest moment because I had no one to turn to.
Calhoun really poured into me. He said, if you commit to this university, you're going to be family forever.
Hang on, buckle up. Span got rejected by Caron Butler.
Everybody knew Butler was coming. Nobody could stop him.
Butler for the lead. Huskies in front, 54-53.
Something big is usually Caron Butler.
The Miami Heat select Caron Butler.
I felt like I was one of the top few players in this draft, so I'm going to make them pay for passing on me.
Caron Butler fades on Jordan.
He was a player that can get his own shot. He could score. Above everything else, he brought toughness and a competitive nature to the game that we really liked.
Butler drives, gets contact, score the field goal. He'll go to the line.
You talk to anyone around the Wizards, and Butler in his first year here is the heart and soul of this team.
Butler, played by James. There's Butler. He scores! Washington by 1.
My time ran out of D.C.
This just into the newsroom. The Wizards have traded Caron Butler to the Dallas Mavericks, a 7-player deal.
I would say that he motivated us, inspired us.
The celebration will begin. The Dallas Mavericks are NBA champions.
It's a vision, it's a dream. You know, you want it to happen, but it's surreal still.
Let's jog your memory. Caron Butler's story begins in Wisconsin. Some say Racine. Butler says,
South side of Racine, Midtown of Racine is where the community center was at.
The gang life found him early. He was no stranger to the streets, and a happy ending seemed unlikely.
When I was 10, you know, I was getting in trouble with school and everything, but when I turned 11, that's when I, started hitting the block and started selling cocaine.
I was easily making $3,000-$4,000 a week.
During his freshman year, Butler was arrested at school.
Long story short, ATF come in there, they telling everybody to move to the side of the class, and I'm like, oh, they got me.
He had over an ounce of coke on him, and police found a pistol in his locker.
I got sentenced to 2 years in corrections. I did 18 months.
Butler was sentenced to the Ethan Allen Juvenile Detention Center. Caron knew he had disappointed his family.
When I got actually escorted to the prison, I could see my mother, trailing us in her station wagon, and, she was just so hurt. And she went to sleep in the parking lot out there. My mother didn't give up on me. She still managed to come see me, almost every other day.
And he had a family of his own to worry about.
I already had a kid at the age of 13.
He recognized the road he was going down, and his wake-up call came after a fight landed him in solitary confinement.
I think this being in the hole, that was my darkest moment because I had no one to turn to.
This was the turning point, and Butler turned to basketball.
It wasn't until I went to Ethan Allen, I fell in love with basketball because I was able to win canteen. Like when I tell you, like it was like prison ball, it was like if I didn't win, I didn't eat. Like it was that mentality.
He discovered a talent and a way out.
I got out, I started playing basketball. Muslim brother by the name of Jamil Aguari hooked me up with this AAU traveling team. And I started traveling around the world with a bracelet on and everything.
Upon release, Butler enrolled at Racine Park High School. On the court, he was rapidly improving. If he kept it up, a potential scholarship was a real possibility. But he hadn't completely left the streets behind.
I heard him coming up. I'm just laying there. It was the ATF. They said it was a drug sale or a transaction that happened that morning. And with my priors, I was facing, I think, 10 to 15. A guy came up to me. His name was Sergeant Rick Geller. All right, I'm gonna let you go. The description of the individual don't fit you. And from that moment, I really was on the straight and narrow.
So basketball became the sole focus, except Butler was already 18. Although he had been at Park High for less than 2 years, technically he was a senior, and he had no more eligibility.
Averaging like 30. Yeah. So they was like, he done. Yeah. He not gonna be doing this to our dudes and to our kids out here.
The school petitioned for another year, citing his overall improvement as a student and an individual. The school board denied Butler's request. He could complete his education, but he couldn't play basketball. Butler needed basketball, so he went east and enrolled at Maine Central Institute. Over the next 2 years, Caron Butler kept his grades up and got his high school diploma. More importantly, he kept his hoop dreams alive. MCI was a powerhouse. They had Butler and future NBAer DeMar Johnson.
Me and DeMar Johnson linked up. He was the #1 player in the country at the time. I looked at it like, you come see him, you gotta see me.
By the fall of '99, Johnson was at the University of Cincinnati. The following year, Caron Butler was on his way to college. The MCI Husky was now a UCONN Husky.
Calhoun really poured into me. He said, if you commit to this university, you're gonna be family forever. And he meant that.
Butler is second in the Big East in steals, has 24 of them. And keep in mind, he missed the first 3 games. He sat out a 3-game suspension involving the financing of his education at Maine Central Institute.
You heard that right. The NCAA suspended Butler for the first 3 games of his college career. The financial discrepancy? A local community center in Racine had given Butler $500. The money went towards his MCI tuition, but as the NCAA saw it, that was a violation of the amateurism rule. The 20-year-old freshman was already getting a late start to college ball, so what's a few more games? UConn was happy to get him back after a disappointing 1-2 start, where they fell to Dayton, and the acclimation was brief. Caron Butler looked like a 20-year-old, and he didn't look like a freshman.
Getting his hands up. Oh, good look. Butler.
The key. Good steal.
Look out below. Caron Butler.
Steal. Beats Hendrick to the hole. Butler, he's got to get it off. And does.
Caron Butler was a shot creator, a shot maker, and just a dog. UConn was only 2 years removed from a national championship. However, outside of guard Albert Mooring, most of that team was gone. It didn't take long to find out who would carry the torch. Not only was Butler UConn's leading scorer, he was also their leading rebounder. He was only 6'7", but no one hit the boards harder. Even going back to MCI, that was Butler's MO. He treated rebounding like he was going to war, and it was most apparent on the offensive glass. Butler got plenty of his points off putbacks.
Take it. Rebound, though, is Butler's.
That's just a man among boys in that rebound.
Boy.
Man, Caron Butler strong.
Or free throws, which often came from putback attempts.
And Butler is just camped out there. If you look closely, you can probably see those size 14s, the imprint. He's got 12 attempts already.
You could see it in the way he played. Caron Butler had a chip on his shoulder, and it wasn't just on offense. Butler was a defensive force as well.
Span got rejected by Caron Butler.
Without Caron Butler, UConn would have been in rough shape. But even with him, it wasn't great. They won 19 games. 11 of those came before conference play began. The Big East was a different beast, and the Huskies eventually fell out of the top 25. A double-digit loss to Syracuse in their conference tourney opener was a gut punch, and UConn missed the tourney for the first time in 5 years. And after a second-round loss in the NIT, Butler wrapped up his stellar freshman year with averages of about 15.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. In just a few short years, Caron Butler had gone from a teenaged felon on a path heading nowhere good to one of the nation's top collegiate basketball players. The NBA had taken notice. Butler had a big decision to make. Would he return for his sophomore year or throw his name into the draft pool? If it sounded like he could go lottery, then head coach Jim Calhoun wouldn't let him miss that opportunity. But most reports were saying he wouldn't even go first round.
This is somebody who I trust, like, pure intentions, Coach Calhoun. When it's time, trust me, if you listen to me, Caron, you will be a lottery pick.
So with a lot more to prove, and to the joy of all Husky fans, it was back to school for Caron Butler. The UConn Huskies would surprise a lot of people this season. They brought in a recruiting class for the ages, headlined by 2 players, a super scorer off the bench named Ben Gordon, and a defensive anchor named Emeka Okafor. These two alone could have changed the Huskies. But there was also senior forward Johnny Selvey, junior guard Tony Robertson, and another member of Butler's recruiting class, sophomore guard Talik Brown. Everyone made an impact. Caron Butler made a statement.
Hang on, Butler. Alley-oop attempt. Butler, they harass him. He got the shot. Oh, that's an All-American play. Outstanding work by Caron Butler.
Butler came back as a more polished version of the already complete player he was. He had worked hard in the offseason to shed 15 pounds and improve his conditioning. Now he was scoring more and more efficiently. He had extended his shooting range.
Butler tees it up. 3 ball for Caron Butler.
I don't think he left us questioning that long-range ability.
And that second-round projection had only added weight to that chip on his shoulder. You could put him out on the perimeter or let him go to work down low. Butler would find a way to put the ball in the basket.
That's what we talk about when we talk about Caron Butler. Whatever you need offensively, he's capable of giving.
He had a genuine ability to completely take over a game.
Well, there's probably not a better go-to guy in the conference than Caron Butler. You know, when it's money time, his team looks for him.
And the takeovers weren't limited to the offensive end.
This is incredible. 4 steals for Butler in the first 5.5.
His draft stock was skyrocketing. And adding Big East Player of the Year to his resume didn't hurt either. The Huskies, however, took time to gel. They got off to a worse start than last year. But the chemistry came through come conference play. Their 13-3 record in Big East competition was tied for tops in the conference. A 6-game win streak to end the year got them back in the top 25. But nothing was certain yet. However, a conference tournament championship would make the NCAA tournament a certainty. Butler went on a tear. Every game was a battle. UConn barely squeaked out a win against Villanova. The next night they took down Notre Dame in another close one. It was down to them and Pittsburgh. One of the most memorable games in Big East championship history.
Everybody knew Butler was coming. Nobody could stop it. Simon, third different player to guard Butler, says, "Hi, nice to see you. I'm the conference player of the year." A nice dribble by Butler. A pro finish.
Not one, but 2 overtimes were needed until Talik Brown delivered the dagger.
Talik Brown has to force one from deep. For the 5th time, the Huskies, the biggest in the Big East.
Butler won tournament MVP.
It's official. You are the MVP. Congratulations. Was this your last Big East tournament game?
Not at all. I'm not even worried about that right now. I'm concentrating on winning out and having a great tournament and hopefully winning the whole thing.
Whether or not it was his last conference game, he and the Huskies had their eyes set on the big dance.
That'll do it. Game. Butler dunks for the 10-point lead.
Round 1 was Hampton, closer than they wanted, but UConn got the win. Next up was NC State.
In the half-court set.
Butler spin move, 14-point run by UConn.
And really too good a player for the man guarding him in Hodge.
Butler takes the three.
Oh, wow. Huge shot. That's a tough shot. And he makes it anyway.
Wow, Caron Butler.
This was a perfect example of Butler putting the team on his back. A 34-point, 9-rebound performance, 10 of 13 from the field, and 12 of 12 from the free throw line. And the Huskies needed every bit of that to get them through to the Sweet 16. Against Southern Illinois, UConn flexed their defensive muscles, and Butler led the team in scoring, this time a more modest 19 points. It was on to the Elite 8. Maryland had been running through everyone, but they wouldn't run through UConn. The Huskies kept it close all game. Big thanks to Caron Butler.
Leading him tonight. Butler with another 3.
The sophomore dropped 32 points on nearly 70% shooting. 26 of those came in the second half alone.
They just cannot keep Butler off the offensive glass.
Each time Maryland began to pull away, Butler countered with a big shot.
Butler for the lead. Huskies in front, 54-53.
With a minute left, it was anyone's game, but Maryland hit another gear. and UConn could only watch as their season came to an end. But Caron Butler had left his legacy. It had been a goal of his since he arrived. The Chris Smiths, the Ray Allens, the Rip Hamiltons, Butler wanted to be in that company. And now with the Big East Tournament Championship and Conference Player of the Year, he was. And the super sophomore ended his second year at UConn with averages of about 20.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. Connecticut had a championship caliber team. As we'd see in the coming years, they would reach that mountaintop. But for Caron Butler and where he came from, the goal had always been the professional game, the challenge it brings, and especially the financial stability that comes with it.
If I'm gonna be a lottery pick, I can provide for my family. I can create first-generation riches and eventually turn it to wealth, so it was an easy decision.
Last year, he wasn't projected in the first round. This year, he was projected no lower than top 10. So instead of returning as a title favorite, he made a tearful declaration. Caron Butler was going pro.
With the 10th pick in the 2002 NBA Draft, the Miami Heat select Caron Butler from the University of Connecticut.
Caron, as a troubled youngster, there were times when you made your mom Maddie cry. What was it like for you tonight to get picked and to see her tears of joy?
It was very emotional because she stuck with me for 22 years. So this is a great moment in my basketball career.
3 years from now, people are going to be talking about this kid who slipped a 10 the same way they talk about Paul Pierce, who slipped a 10 also.
I went 10 in this draft, and I felt like I was one of the top few players in this draft, so I'm going to make them pay for passing on me.
Well, that chip on his shoulder definitely wasn't going anywhere. And if there was one team that really regretted passing on him, it was Cleveland, because they didn't want to. The Cavs had a steal of a deal in place to acquire Lamar Odom along with the 8th and 12th picks for Andre Miller, but they didn't confirm it in time. And when they did call the Clippers to accept, LA had already submitted their 8th overall pick. The Clips got Chris Wilcox, and Cleveland didn't get Butler or Odom, but maybe that was a blessing in disguise. Anyways, when you think of ideal landing spots for a guy like Butler, Miami would be at the top of that list. A no-nonsense coach in Pat Riley. A tough, hardworking culture built during the late 90s, spearheaded by Tim Hardaway and Alonzo Mourning. That sounded right up Butler's alley. Hardaway was gone. Mourning was still there, but kidney disease would keep him sidelined all season. The Heat had already showed signs of slowing down last year, and the decline would continue in 2003. Butler joined a bit of a youth movement in Miami, no one with too much fanfare outside of their top veteran Eddie Jones, who would miss half the season himself. Miami remained true to their defensive identity, but with very little offense, wins were hard to come by. Butler could give you some offense. The rookie swingman recognized the opportunity, and he didn't plan to mess that up.
Aggressive defense by the Magic. Sean Kemp slammed in. What a play by Caron Butler.
I'll tell you what. Oh, the steal by Butler. He hammered it down. Caron Butler fades on Jordan, and we've got a new game tied at 56.
Butler established himself as Miami's most consistent offensive player this season, their second leading scorer, and one of their best defenders. He wanted to show those other 9 teams that they made a mistake, just like Paul Pierce did. Their draft day slip wasn't their only similarity.
Man, I used to love playing against Paul Pierce. Like, I modeled my game after him. Our games was really similar. We was athletic enough, but we was just skilled and we operated in the same spaces.
They had similar rookie seasons, and just like Pierce, Butler would get a first-team all-rookie selection and finish 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting. The Heat expectedly finished near the bottom of the league, but Butler looked like a potential building block after finishing the year with averages of about 15.5 points, 5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. Things were changing in Miami. Pat Riley and Alonzo Mourning couldn't come to an agreement to bring back the franchise legend. A new era was beginning. Caron Butler was a good start, but they still needed more pieces. They found someone in the 2003 draft.
With the 5th pick in the 2003 NBA Draft, the Miami Heat select Dwyane Wade from Marquette University.
So now the Heat had Butler and Dwyane Wade, Maybe they're wings of the future, but it still wasn't enough. A month later, they signed Lamar Odom, a guy who could play the point forward. That was a role Riley was trying to get Butler to play last season. However, Odom was much better suited. Yet for Butler, was that good or bad news? Well, worse news for Butler was knee surgery. A month before the season, he went under the knife. They made an interesting discovery.
After the surgery, I got a phone call and said, was Caron shot in his knee before? I asked Caron about it. He was like, I forgot to mention to you. I think I might have been shot in my knee before.
Unexpected, but it didn't deter his recovery, and he was available for opening night. But his early season play was terrible. He eventually got shut down for a couple weeks. Upon return, he was in the back seat. Wade and Odom were proving to be two very good pickups. And with Eddie Jones back and healthy, Butler saw his role severely reduced playing under new head coach Stan Van Gundy. Following the shocking resignation of Pat Riley, Butler's confidence was at an all-time low.
Because for a while he doubted that he was going to be able to come back and play and be as athletic as he was at the end of his rookie season. They stayed with him, they believed in him, he stayed after.
It was a new challenge, but Caron Butler had been through worse. The Heat struggled most of the season, but beginning in March, Butler started to look more like himself. Coincidentally, the Heat hit their stride at the same time.
And, that's one of the reasons why they started slow. They were 0-7, and you can see as he's come back, they've had one of the strongest finishes. They were 21-7 after the All-Star break. In March, they were 11 games under 500, made a tremendous surge to finish 2 over.
Miami had played their way into a top 4 seed in the East. Home court advantage as they took on New Orleans in round 1. Caron Butler's first playoff appearance. During his UConn days, he had shown a propensity to deliver in the big moment. The NBA proved no different.
Jones, the feed for Butler. Odom Alston for 3. And a great putback up and in by the hustling Caron Butler.
It was the best Butler had looked all year. He was scoring, rebounding, and forcing turnovers. This series was a battle.
And the fans in South Florida walking up the steps and making their way for what is always a special event. A Game 7 in the NBA playoffs. It is unmatched.
And Odom gets it into the hands of Jones. First at 38%. Here is Caron Butler, and he hits his first two.
This Miami team, not great offensively. They'll let you back in.
Well, they got to stop Caron Butler, that's for sure. 21 points for Butler.
In a win-or-go-home scenario, Butler drops a team-high 23 points. 11 of those coming in the first quarter to give the Heat a lead that they never relinquished. And now it was on to round 2. Butler wouldn't have the same success against the top-tier Pacers team, and that was mostly because of one man. Ron Artest dominated defensively, and even on the offensive end, he was giving the second-year swingman fits. Miami didn't go down without a fight, but after 6 games, their season was over. And Butler's sophomore year ended with averages of about 9 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. You could call it a sophomore slump, or you could blame the knee surgery. However you spun it, this wasn't a good follow-up for Caron Butler. Dwyane Wade was a superstar in the making, and Miami had surprised a lot of people. An unexpected championship window was opening. So Pat Riley mortgaged the future and bet on the now. Shaq was coming to South Beach. Caron and others were going to Hollywood. As far as players go, Los Angeles had acquired Butler, Lamar Odom, and veteran big man Brian Grant, all joining a 26-year-old Kobe Bryant. And Kobe wasn't playing around.
I'm talking about in real time. He's signing his contract, and he's like, be ready to black out. It was just like... And then it went to that. And then the next day, we're in the gym doing 2-a-days.
The Lakers had also coaxed longtime Rockets coach Rudy Tomjanovich to come aboard following a 1-year health-related hiatus. No one was quite sure how it would all work, but that's why you play the game. Under Rudy T, the Lakers had an offensive approach, and Butler quickly showed that last year was more of an outlier.
Here's Butler again, and Butler's on fire.
Caron Butler was LA's second leading scorer on solid efficiency. When teams sent the house at Kobe, LA had someone who could get them a bucket, and his knee was looking just fine. The Lakers were holding their own, but at the midway point, Rudy T stepped down to again focus on his health, and the wheels fell off. Over their final 39 games, LA totaled just 10 wins. Chemistry issues arose as it was made public that Butler and Odom had apparently complained to former teammate Dwyane Wade about how difficult it was to get Kobe to pass them the ball. And Wade didn't deny it. But overall, Butler is eternally grateful for his time spent with Kobe.
The reason why I was an all-star player, the reason why I'm in the coaching space is because my time that I spent with Kobe Bryant.
Back on the court, Lamar Odom would miss the final month of the season. And there lied the Lakers' biggest issue: depth. It was Kobe at the top, Butler and Odom playing the complementary role, and then a whole lot of nothing after that. Butler would play his best basketball after Odom went down, but it was loss after loss, and a Lakers team which had appeared in 4 of the past 5 NBA Finals would miss the playoffs altogether, as Butler's first year in LA saw him average about 15.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. At this point, Caron Butler may have been undervalued. Yes, he had been traded to LA for one of the greatest first overall picks of all time, but due to Butler's down year in Miami, Lamar Odom was the centerpiece of that deal. There was even debate whether or not Butler would be third option. Safe to say he was. He was arguably their second option. And now, after the best season of his career, the Lakers wanted size, so they secured a package headlined by another former first overall pick, Kwame Brown. And now Caron Butler was on his way to the nation's capital. Three teams in 3 years. Caron Butler was looking for a home, and finally a team was showing some commitment to him. A few months after the trade, the Wizards inked him to a 5-year extension. They just lost Larry Hughes to free agency, and they didn't want that to happen with Butler. Caron would be joining 2 top-notch offensive talents, Gilbert Arenas and Antoine Jamison. That was plenty of scoring on their first unit, so to start the season, head coach Eddie Jordan was bringing Butler off the bench. It was going well.
Here's Butler going all the way baseline and a hanging shot off the glass.
Really well.
Oh! It's Butler with a great twirling mood inside.
There were few growing pains for Caron Butler. He just looked like a wizard.
You talk to anyone around the Wizards, and Butler in his first year here is the heart and soul of this team.
A few days before Christmas, he broke into the starting lineup and never looked back. Washington began the season with a duo, but they ended with a trio.
Well, this year they have the second highest scoring duo with Arenas and Jamison. You see at 48 points per game behind Iverson and Weber. How good has Iverson been recently? Terrific. But if you throw in Butler, they're the highest scoring trio.
Butler had the most prolific and efficient season of his career up to that point. With teams focusing more on Arenas and Jamison, he could let the game come to him. He was a smooth scorer, a deceptive ball handler, and where he really set himself apart was on defense.
He's only going to get you 15 to 25 on most nights. Plus he's going to get you that 6 to 7 rebounds, and then he's a tough defender.
In one season, Caron Butler had quietly become one of the most well-rounded players in the NBA. He was exactly what Washington needed. The Wizards rode their top 3 offense, coming mostly from 3 players, to a 42-40 record. Last year they had made it to the second round. This year they'd be playing a phenom, making his first postseason appearance. You couldn't ask for much better from Caron Butler in his Wizards playoff debut. Over 18 points a game, the only player in the series to average double-digit rebounds.
Butler, put back, so strong underneath.
And a valiant effort on defense. As valiant as possible, with LeBron playing out of his mind.
We try to go under on pick and rolls. That didn't work. We try to go over, try to bully over. We try to shoot the gaps. We try to stay connected. We try to meet them in transition.
Tried everything.
We try to weak them, strong them. We blitzed them. We try to red, send a double team, late blacks. We showed him literally every coverage in a playoff series, and he dissected it.
The teams entered the pivotal Game 5 knotted at 2 games apiece. Butler exploded for 11 fourth-quarter points to push the game into overtime. Then LeBron broke their heart.
James for the win.
Butler pulled down 20 rebounds in Game 6. The game again went to overtime. It was another heartbreaker.
Damon Jones puts it in with 4.8 remaining.
This time it ended their season. And Caron Butler wrapped up year 1 in Washington with averages of about 17.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. Season was over, but Washington had their future. Caron Butler wasn't going anywhere for a while. The Wizards had clearly won the trade. Butler exceeded everyone's expectations, but now everyone expected nothing less. It was the starting lineup for Caron Butler from the jump. He didn't have a single-digit scoring game until late January. He had raised the bar yet again. Career highs across the board. He scored when he wanted to and how he wanted to.
Caron Butler straight to the hole, and boy, we know that. He can elevate, he can get there. He's a finisher. He's a legitimate finisher.
He was a beast on the glass, the team's second leading rebounder, and a putback machine.
Kurt Thomas will play nice. Oh, what a play by Butler!
Butler was averaging over 19 points a game, and that was only good for third on the team.
Once again, the highest scoring trio in the league for back-to-back seasons, at least for now, is Butler, Arenas, and Jamison.
But again, the Wizards were all offense, no defense. Well, except for Butler. He was playing hard on both ends, averaging over 2 steals per game and boasting the lowest defensive rating on the team.
You've got Caron Butler among the top 10 in steals in the NBA, and you've got to protect the basketball.
Caron Butler just brought something different to the franchise.
Morrison to beat goes behind his back and flushes it down.
I, as a coach, always talked about our team needing the juice. I just said he's the toughest one that brings us the juice.
He was like, man, you tough juice, man. And they kind of just stuck.
He is known as Tough Juice.
CB, tough juice. Tough juice.
And he did it all so casually. As the game goes on, you don't think he's hurting you too bad. You look at the stat sheet at the end, and he's filled up every column. It was a great luxury. However, a lot of times all the Wizards needed was their offense. Washington wasn't the most consistent, but they could hang with anyone. By the All-Star break, they were 8 games above 500, and they were sending 2 of their own. One was MVP candidate Gilbert Arenas. The other was Caron Butler.
We have a checkbox of our own. Like when we come into the league, I was able to check one of those things, check one of those boxes by making an All-Star team.
After the break, injury hit Butler hard. He appeared in just 13 of their final 32 games, and the Wizards went 12-20 in that stretch. A 41-41 record got them the 7th seed and a rematch. However, they were still without Butler, and now also without Arenas. The Wizards never stood a chance. A Cavaliers sweep put a bow on the 07 season, one that had seen Butler break out with averages of about 19 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and 2 steals per game. The Wizards were on the right track. The injuries had derailed that, but with an offseason to recover, the Big Three was expected back and healthy. They had gotten a nice lift out of Deshaun Stevenson last season as well. 2008 was supposed to be their breakthrough. About 2 weeks into the season, and the trio was a duo once again. Gilbert Arenas went down. He wouldn't be back for a while, and Caron Butler took another step forward.
Butler off the bounce. Butler hangs, count it, and a foul. Oh my goodness, Caron Butler.
You got to do it without fouling, especially out there.
Butler with the tie, did it. 10.1 to play, and it wasn't easy.
The ISO game was as strong as ever. Now he could call himself a 20-point-per-game guy. And with their point guard sidelined, he took on the role of a primary ball handler. His facilitation was on full display, and his once shaky three-point shot was a lot more stable.
Flash this. Looking up with Brandon Bassford on the outside at 3. Up over Dirk and good.
He was automatic at the free throw line, and with their usual closer sidelined, Butler delivered some knockout blows.
Butler to the basket. And Butler is going crazy down the stretch here.
It wasn't the big three, but he and Jamison were as good as any duo. They'd both be heading to the All-Star game, proving that last year hadn't been a fluke.
My best year was, pretty much, even though I was an isolation player, it came from being with great teammates. Like Gilbert made sure I was successful. Antoine made sure I was successful.
However, Butler didn't play in the All-Star game. For the second straight year, he wasn't too available over the second half of the season. But unlike last year, he would come back. With about a month left in the season, the Wizards were below 500, yet they ended with 43 wins. It was another year, another first-round series with Cleveland. Maybe third time's the charm. After a one-year hiatus, Butler was on a mission. He was doing it all for Washington, yet a shorthanded Wizards team was still fighting an uphill battle. They were down 3-1 and hoping to keep their season alive in hostile territory. Caron Butler put the team on his back. He dropped 32 points and pulled down 9 boards, but with less than 10 seconds left, the Wizards were still down 1.
Butler, played by James. There's Butler. He scores! Washington by 1.
Game winner on the road to keep their season alive. But the celebration wouldn't last long. A few nights later, Washington was dismantled on their home court. And for the third time in as many years, the Cavs ended their season, with Butler wrapping up another All-Star campaign with averages of about 20.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. 2 years derailed by injuries. You wanted to be hopeful that it wouldn't happen again, but it was hard. The Wizards front office was keeping optimism. They re-signed Jamison, then re-signed Arenas, but the optimism quickly turned to regret. Gilbert Arenas would never be the same. He'd only take the court twice throughout the entire 09 season. So once again, it was up to Antoine Jamison and Caron Butler. For lack of a better term, it was a disaster season in Washington. After a 1-10 start, Eddie Jordan was let go. The players liked Jordan, so that didn't do anything to improve morale. And neither did all the losing. It didn't stop with the firing of Jordan. Washington had gotten younger, and in turn inexperienced. They had been a surprisingly solid defensive team last year. That wasn't the case this year. And outside of Butler and Jamison, they wouldn't get much offense either. But when they did win games, it was usually because of Butler.
Against Rangers. Backs up, fires. Dagger!
I'm a captain of this team, and I ride with my ship when it's going good, and I'm gonna ride with it when it's going bad, and we don't turn this thing around. And I'm an all-star.
Statistically, he was having an all-star caliber season. A career-high scoring average was proof. But when you're on one of the worst teams in the league, you're probably going to get passed over. And that's exactly what the Wizards were. The ship was sinking. They couldn't even crack 20 wins. And Butler finished the year with averages of about 21 points, 6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists per game. Caron Butler was in the prime of his career, but if the Wizards had a window, it was closing. However, it seemed like they might get one last chance at it. Arenas was actually available and playing well throughout the early going, but it's the 2000s Wizards. Something was going to ruin that. The infamous gun incident. After appearing in 32 games, Arenas was suspended indefinitely. Butler had given everything to DC, on and off the court. He kept pushing through the season, but the writing was on the wall.
My time ran out in DC. My love for DC will always be there, like that's my second home, but my time there ran out from a basketball standpoint, and I was exhausted.
This just into the newsroom. The Wizards have traded Caron Butler to the Dallas Mavericks, a 7-player deal.
Caron Butler was traded during the All-Star break, the newest member of the Dallas Mavericks. A veteran team, yet one that was in a position to win now. It seemed like a smart move. It even got the stamp of approval from an old friend, and fans quickly agreed. Butler gave the Mavs an extra scoring punch in the starting lineup to supplement Dirk Nowitzki. The Mavs were 32-20 at the time of the trade, but with the addition of Butler and Brendan Haywood, the Mavs went on a tear. They lost just 7 games post-All-Star break and were the 2 seed going into a first-round matchup with San Antonio. Dallas started slow. And Butler was ice cold. Once he started to heat up, it was too late. Dallas had fallen behind 3-1. Facing elimination, Butler turned in a monster 35-point, 11-rebound performance to keep their hopes alive. But 2 nights later, San Antonio wrapped it up at home. Dallas was stunned, and Butler ended his overall season with averages of about 16.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. The Butler trade was supposed to help push Dallas over the top. It didn't guarantee a championship, but a first-round exit was a massive failure. They may have just wasted their best opportunity, but that didn't mean opportunity was gone. They still had their core in place. You have Jason Terry leading your second unit, a second unit that runs deep. Both Sean Marion and Caron Butler are giving you two-way production. You have Jason Kidd directing your offense, and then you have Dirk Nowitzki providing you with all the offense you need. But where's that presence inside? That big man who makes opponents think twice. That's what they needed, and that's what they got. An offseason trade landed them Tyson Chandler, and now you're looking more like a championship roster. New Year's Day 2011, back home in Wisconsin, and Caron Butler is laying crumpled on the floor.
And I see literally, he tore his patella tendon and his kneecap had dislocated, so it sat.
His thigh.
It sat up top on his thigh.
I had everybody in attendance, but my mom, my family, all my kids was there, and I just couldn't allow myself to get, taken off in a wheelchair or something like that. So man law had to come into double effect. I had to 10X that and just, walk off the court.
Torn patellar tendon. His season was over. He had been such a weapon for them over their first few months, their second option in the starting five, and a capable defender. The Mavs had lost Butler, but they gained motivation. Dallas racked up 57 wins. First round of the playoffs was the Blazers. 6-game series win. Next up, defending champion LA Lakers. That was a sweep. Conference finals brought an up-and-coming Thunder team. The Mavs were gentlemen and ended it in 5. Finally the Heat and their newly formed Big Three. But at this point it was destiny. Dirk and the Mavs wouldn't be denied. And Dallas captured the crown. Caron Butler was an NBA champion.
And every day watching him, how he handled himself, how he tackled that rehab, that really motivated us and that inspired us for that 10-11 run.
Maybe not the season he expected, but definitely the ending he wanted. And in his 29 games, Butler averaged about 15 points, 4 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. 9 years in, and Caron Butler was a 2-time All-Star and had gotten a ring, and now he had some freedom. His contract was up, and he decided to go back to LA, except this time he'd be playing for the other team, and almost immediately that proved to be a good decision. 5 days after Butler signed, the Clippers acquired Chris Paul, and Lob City was born. So Butler wasn't on the receiving end of many lobs, but he was doing what the Clippers asked: a bit of scoring, a bit of rebounding, and some floor spacing. At 30 years old, coming off a major knee injury, he wasn't getting separation like he used to, and overall the shots weren't falling too often, so he started setting up behind the arc. It wasn't a bad idea. He put up career highs in made and attempted threes, and the shots were falling about 36% of the time. And Butler understood that this was a different situation. He wasn't the star anymore, but that didn't bother him. His main objective never changed. Bottom line was always getting the win. However, like any new team, the Clippers took some time to gel, but they recovered in time and finished with 40 wins. They'd get a spot in the Western Conference playoffs. Butler was ready for a deep playoff run. Game 1 was the Clippers' legendary fourth-quarter comeback to steal the win in Memphis. Butler had 12 points, but during the comeback, he was on the bench, nursing what would end up being a fractured left hand. For many, that would be the end of their postseason, but Butler was tough juice. He was back by Game 3, and still playing big minutes, helping the Clippers outlast the Grizzlies in 7. Next up was the Spurs.
Butler screen. Again, they surround Paul, force him to give it up, and Butler showing some hops.
It didn't look like the hand was causing Butler too many problems, but the Spurs were causing the Clippers a lot of problems. San Antonio only needed 4 games to get past LA. And Butler's first year as a Clipper ended with him averaging about 12 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. So Butler may not have been a game changer in year 1 with the Clippers, but he was a culture changer. A lot of the veterans were bringing a new attitude to the team. They added some more weapons like Jamal Crawford. They knew this was their best chance in probably ever to challenge for a title. Caron Butler was over a year removed from his knee surgery, had an offseason to let his hand heal, and would turn in his most available season in years. He was a solid complementary piece. At 32 years old, he wasn't going to be putting up Wizards numbers, but every once in a while, he'd do something reminiscent of his youth.
That's the other way. Caron Butler on the left wing. Assault the rack with a right hand and delivers a facial.
But like last year, his main value was his floor spacing. Butler had clearly done a lot of work to become a real threat from beyond the arc.
Bingo! That's a new record for a quarter. He's unconscious.
Butler made over 100 triples for the first and only time in his career. He was one of 5 Clippers to average double-figure scoring, and their defense was even better. Their 56 wins were the most in franchise history, and they'd get a rematch with the Grizzlies in round 1. But for LA, it wouldn't be the same result as last year. Butler picked the wrong time to go cold from beyond the arc. It seemed like it wouldn't matter after LA went up 2-0. Then Memphis took over and dominated. 4 straight Grizzly wins, and the Clippers' season was over. And Butler's season had seen him average about 10.5 points, 3 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. After that embarrassing playoff loss, LA decided to make some changes. And one of those changes involved trading Butler to Phoenix. He was a member of the Suns for less than 2 months before he was traded again to Milwaukee. Something of a homecoming. Now the Bucks were far from challenging for anything, but they were young. Caron Butler had a reputation around the league for his toughness and leadership. That was one of the main reasons Milwaukee brought him in. But they got a nice surprise when Butler dropped double figures in 6 of his first 8 games, including a 38-point explosion against Philly. He was in and out of the lineup with injuries over the first half of the year, but he was showing he still had a lot left in the tank, yet he wanted to play for a contender. So in late February, he and the Bucks agreed to a buyout. A few days later, Butler was in OKC. Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook were carrying the Thunder, one of the best teams in the West, but they needed to get a little more from the rest of the team, so Butler was brought in to provide a bench spark, and he would. He hit double figures in half of his games with the Thunder. OKC finished 1 win shy of 60 on the year. Their first round matchup would be the Memphis Grizzlies. Butler struggled in the early going, and the series needed the full 7 games. But in Game 7, Butler started. He played 40 minutes and chipped in 15 points. The Thunder avoided the upset and were on to round 2, a matchup with Butler's former team. LA was fast-paced, and Butler wasn't moving all that fast anymore. So he saw minutes decrease in this series, but he would get bragging rights. Butler wasn't a factor in a conference finals matchup with San Antonio, and this is where the Thunder met the end of the road. And Butler ended his overall season with averages of about 10.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. After his postseason struggles, the Butler and OKC relationship came to an end. But he found a new home in Detroit, again brought in as more of a veteran presence on a young team. His availability was impressive, 78 appearances and even 21 starts, but his minutes were at an all-time low, and the age and bad knee were understandably catching up to him, and the Pistons were understandably bad. 3 wins in their first 22 games set the tone for the year, and while they actually turned their season respectable, they weren't going to be seeing the postseason, as Butler ended his year in Detroit with averages of about 6 points, 2.5 rebounds, and an assist per game. Detroit traded Butler back to the Bucks in the offseason. A few weeks later, they waived him, but he had just tied his career high in games played, so he decided to go for another year, at least, signing a 2-year deal with the Kings. But in Sacramento, he knew that he was done.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, I checked in Sacramento, and in my head, I thought I took off, but I didn't take off.
He couldn't move like he used to, and spent most of his time cheering from the bench. The Kings missed the playoffs, and in 17 appearances, Butler averaged about 3.5 points, 1.5 rebounds, and half an assist per game. Butler wouldn't return to the Kings, And in early 2018, he made it official, announcing his retirement after 14 seasons. But he wasn't done with basketball. First, it was broadcasting. Then in 2020, it was back on the sideline, joining the Miami Heat as an assistant coach, where he remains as of 2026. He was also smart with his money throughout his career. He was taking orders at Burger King as a teen. Now he owns 6 of them.
I fell in love with the process of being a serial entrepreneur. I really did, along with obviously being a father.
And yes, he's a coach. Yes, he's a businessman. But more than anything, he wants to be a role model and example.
I want to be a guy that transcends the game to another level. A guy that, a lot of people can look at and be like, he's been through some real life stuff and he overcame that. He overcame all those obstacles. And if he can do it, I can do it.
He has a voice and he uses it, but he's also making sure that his voice isn't the only one.
And we came up with the title Shot Clock because we're all up against time. So I took these kids' stories that I coached, that I seen in the neighborhood, that I was able to mentor, that I was able to, try to help. And we just telling these stories, these real stories, and hope that they come part of the core curriculum.
Caron Butler is your movie script rags to riches story. He was heading down a path that only had 2 destinations. He got the wake-up call he needed before it was too late. And after that, it was all business. From his unconventional high school story to his time at UConn putting himself on the pro radar, finishing with a 14-year All-Star career and an NBA championship. It doesn't get much better than Caron Butler's journey. His game was a reflection of himself. He wasn't loud or flashy. He just operated quietly and did whatever he had to do to survive. And if his shot wasn't falling, he immediately found another way to impact the game. But more than impacting games, he's impacted the lives of many with his story, whether directly or indirectly. And he continues to do so post-career with his foray into the coaching world. And before we end it off, just want to give a quick shout out. Recently enabled channel memberships and just want to say thank you for the early support. But that's it for today's episode on Caron Butler. Hope you enjoyed it and make sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. If you liked it, check out this one on one of his UConn teammates, or this one on another slept-on swingman of the 2000s. Thanks for watching and see you next time.